God's mercy.
You do not deserve mercy!
What mercy did you show to our people? Die. Wait! He may help us. He can die for us. Mudak!
This is not war! This is murder! This is how you win the war, Chernobyl!
Released in 2008, Call of Duty, World at War is often hailed as one of the most intense and visceral portrayals of World War II in the first-person shooter genre. Developed by Treyarch, this installment marked a significant departure from its predecessors, focusing on the brutal, unforgiving realities of war. With its raw and emotional depiction of combat, World at War set itself apart from other shooters by embracing the darkness and violence of the era. The game's campaigns, characters, environments, and even the groundbreaking zombie mode all came together to create a title that became one of the most iconic in the Call of Duty series. One of the most notable features of World at War was its dark and gritty tone. Unlike previous Call of Duty titles, which had often focused on the heroic aspects of war, World at War dove deep into the chaos and brutality of combat. Treyarch took the series in a new direction by focusing on the Pacific and Eastern fronts, areas that were often underrepresented in games at the time. This shift in focus allowed players to experience war from different perspectives, highlighting the personal and emotional toll it took on soldiers. The game's intense, heart-pounding action was matched by its more mature themes, depicting war as a harrowing struggle for survival rather than a series of glorious victories. Soldiers were not portrayed as invincible heroes. Instead, they were presented as real individuals, fighting in desperate situations where every step could be their last. The psychological impact of war was evident in both the narrative and the gameplay, making World at War one of the most powerful and unforgettable entries in the series. The Pacific campaign in World at War took players into the dense jungles and humid islands of the South Pacific. Unlike the more familiar European battlefields seen in previous games, the Pacific campaign was a brutal and unforgiving experience. As Private Miller, a U.S. Marine, players fought on the island of Peleliu against the Imperial Japanese Army. The setting was harsh. Players were constantly battling not just the enemy, but also the hostile environment itself. The tropical heat, dense vegetation, and treacherous waters all played a significant role in creating a sense of isolation and vulnerability. The Japanese forces in the Pacific theater were infamous for their ferocity and willingness to fight to the death. The banzai charge, in which Japanese soldiers would charge at you recklessly, created moments of sheer chaos and panic, adding a level of unpredictability to the combat. The Japanese soldiers did not just fight for victory, they fought with a fanatic intensity, willing to sacrifice their lives for their cause. This created a sense of danger that was ever present, making every corner feel like a potential death trap. The game also introduced a variety of new weapons and tools, including the flamethrower, which added a new level of destructiveness to the player's arsenal. The flamethrower was especially effective in the dense jungles, where it could flush out enemies hiding in the thick foliage. However, while it gave players a feeling of power, it also served as a reminder of the devastation of war, as flames could spread uncontrollably, consuming everything in their path. Survival was key in the Pacific campaign, and the game did not shy away from showing the brutal realities of the conflict. Every mission felt like a struggle for survival, where players had to endure the relentless heat, treacherous terrain, and the constant threat of ambush. The unpredictable nature of the Japanese soldiers made each encounter tense and nerve-wracking. The Pacific campaign was not just about fighting to defeat the enemy. It was about overcoming the environment and staying alive long enough to see the next day. In contrast to the tropical jungle-filled Pacific, the eastern front of the war presented a very different kind of challenge. The Soviet campaign in World at War was anchored by one of the most brutal and pivotal battles of World War II, the Siege of Stalingrad. This was a battle that changed the course of history, and the game's portrayal of it was unflinching and gritty. As Private Dmitry Petrenko, players fought alongside the Soviet Red Army in the ruins of the city, where the constant bombardment, destroyed buildings, and overwhelming German forces created a suffocating atmosphere. One of the most memorable aspects of the Soviet campaign was the character of Sergeant Reznov, a tough and vengeful leader who quickly became a fan favorite. His personal quest for revenge against the Germans added an emotional layer to the campaign. Reznov's intense hatred of the enemy and his drive to avenge his fallen comrades made him a compelling and unforgettable character. The levels in Stalingrad were marked by an oppressive atmosphere of desperation. The streets were filled with rubble, smoke, and the sound of constant gunfire. Every corner held the potential for ambush. The brutality of the battle was portrayed in stark detail, showing the devastating toll it took on soldiers. The mission where players stormed the Berlin was the climax of the campaign, as the Soviet forces closed in on Nazi Germany's capital. The contrast between the overwhelming power of Soviet tanks and the vulnerability of the soldiers on foot created a unique dynamic, forcing players to think strategically and carefully navigate the battlefields. The heart of World at War lay in its deeply human characters, each of whom offered a unique perspective on the war. The contrast between Private Miller and Private Dmitry Petrenko was stark, reflecting the different experiences of soldiers fighting in two vastly different theaters of World War II. Miller's story was one of survival, as he fought through the jungles of the Pacific against the Japanese forces. His experience was defined by the brutal nature of jungle warfare, where the enemy often struck without warning. The isolation and constant threat of death created a tense and emotionally taxing experience for players. Petrenko's journey was also one of survival, but the Eastern Front presented a different kind of horror. The cold, desolate landscape of Stalingrad and the overwhelming power of the German forces created a sense of hopelessness. Petrenko's relationship with Reznov, his mentor and ally, was crucial to the emotional depth of the story. Though not always a playable character, Reznov's impact on the Soviet campaign was immense. His personality and fierce dedication to revenge made him a central figure in the narrative. His character added a level of depth to the story, showing that the war was not just about fighting for your country, it was about fighting for justice, revenge, and personal redemption. One of the standout features of World at War was the tank missions, where players took control of powerful Soviet tanks. These missions provided a unique perspective on warfare, combining traditional first-person shooter gameplay with tank combat. The feeling of crushing through enemy defenses was exhilarating, but the constant threat of enemy fire kept players on edge. These missions gave players a sense of power, but also of vulnerability, as tanks were vulnerable to attacks from all sides. Perhaps one of the most surprising and impactful features of World at War was the inclusion of zombie mode. Originally a hidden bonus mode, Nazi zombies became an unexpected sensation, leading to its own dedicated following. In this mode, players fought off endless waves of Nazi zombies in an abandoned military base. The goal was simple: survive as long as possible against increasingly difficult waves of undead enemies. The mode quickly became a fan favorite, and it was so popular that it would go on to become a staple of future Call of Duty titles. The combination of horror, intense action, and cooperative gameplay made zombie mode a unique experience. Players could team up with friends to fight off waves of zombies using a variety of weapons and strategies to stay alive. The mode's popularity grew rapidly, and it became one of the key reasons why World at War remains fondly remembered by fans of the series Call of Duty. World at War remains one of the most beloved entries in the Call of Duty series. Its dark, brutal portrayal of World War II, combined with its memorable characters, immersive environments, and innovative features, made it stand out as one of the most impactful games of its generation. The Pacific and Soviet campaigns offered a deep and emotional look at two of the most pivotal fronts of the war, and the inclusion of Nazi zombies would go on to change the course of the series forever. While the game was initially overshadowed by the more polished Modern Warfare series, World at War has maintained a strong fan base over the years. Its dedication to portraying the harsh realities of war and its willingness to embrace both the emotional and physical toll of combat made it one of the most unforgettable games in the history of first-person shooters. In the end, World at War not only captured the chaos of war, but also demonstrated the resilience and humanity of the soldiers caught in it. the game's legacy lives on, both in the memories of those who played it and in the continued popularity of zombie mode, which remains one of the defining features of the Call of Duty franchise. Let me know what you think of this game in the comments below. Also, what's your favorite Call of Duty game? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.
Dimitri! Someone should read this. This is how you end the war, Cherno!